All right, welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 37. With us is Matthew Wolf, the award-winning writer and author of the widely acclaimed fantasy series Ronin Saga. He's here to talk to us about Tides of Fate, which is book 4 of the Ronin Saga, which just launched today as you're listening this, or as you're watching this on October 6th. And Matt, I mean, this is a big day for you, and I'm actually really honored and honored to actually have you talk with us on this giant event of Kickstarters as they go. So thank you.
I'm nervous and excited and all the right things for a Kickstarter release. It's been I didn't sleep much, so thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm excited. It's 2.5 years in the making. So
I know, yeah. So I was looking at your publication dates. This is book 4 of the Ronin Saga, Tides of Fate, and so The Knife's Edge came out in 2013. Mm-hmm. Citadel of Fire, your second book, came out in 2014. So that was right after one after another. And then Bastion came out in 2017. This one is now 2021. Basically, when it's not going to be published, it's going to be January 2021.
Yeah.
So, and you already have, as you say, you've already said you're going to have, this is going to be a 9-book series, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So we have to make sure, though, you're not going to pull a George R. R. Martin and say,
no, I would never. All I know is that I will say, and I will release this. This will be you can hold this, clip this, repeat this to me, send this to me. Everyone can hold me to this. Is that it will be finished, and it's not going to be finished. I'm not going to wrap it up. Like, oh, by the way, here's a 20-page little interlude. Like everyone went. But I'm looking at the scale and the scope of it right now. And always the plan was not to get too nitty-gritty. Is that there's 9 books, so there's 9 elemental legends. So in each book they go to the City of Fire, find the Ronin of Fire. Book 3 they go to the City of Sun to find the young Ronin of Sun, and so forth. So every book, that was the idea. But as it's kind of been panning out, things have been kind of happening in crazy cool pacings. So they find 2 Ronin in one book, or they find no Ronin, or they go to 2 or 3 cities, magical cities. And so 9 books. All I know is that people will get the full the beginning to the end. Sounds like a cop-out, but you're gonna get the whole story.
So real quick, for some of the viewers or listeners that might be new to your work, you want to give kind of a quick because we got, this hour's going to go quick, and I got lots of questions for you. So give us the abbreviated version of how you got into being a highly acclaimed high fantasy author, and then we'll jump right in and start talking about the world you've created.
Perfect. Yeah, I love to. Yeah, so I started writing when I was 18. This is so exciting for me because I never get to do this. All my conventions are in hiatus. So I started writing when I was 18, and I had no idea where I was kind of going with it. It was just this idea that was spinning in my mind. I read tons of fantasy. I read all of the classics. We were talking about Real Time and Terry Goodkind and R.L. Salvatore and Tracy Hickman. And so I was a different major, and I was an astrophysics major actually at the time. And I just decided on the side to keep myself sane, I would start writing these little stories. And so I had this kind of random story about this character who was really kind of basic. And it was about the young who has to, go out into these woods and face off against this evil. And so anyway, it was this pretty cut and dry fantasy story, and I started writing it, and kind of was bold enough to go to these different writers' conferences, and so there I actually met Tracy Hickman, and books. He gave me some writing advice, and he kind of took me under his wing, and it was super cool. And then I kind of just kept writing. So in 2013. I decided things were going pretty well. I had some agents that were interested, and I had some like full requests and some partial requests and everything. And I was kind of like back and forth. And I'm like, I know the book is good. I know this is a good series. I know I can do really well on it. I just want to get it out there, and I know that I'm okay at speaking with people. So I took a risk, and I published The Knife's Edge in like 2013, the end of it. And I got lucky. It was word of mouth. I did some promotion and stuff in the beginning, but mostly it was I think it was like January in 2014, and it hit the top 5 on Amazon for ebooks, and then I've just been kind of like spinning off since then. Recently, book 4 is the one we're working on now. Book 2 took about 6 months from there, and really, it was doing really well. But it was I got really lucky recently with my narrator, Tim Gerard Reynolds, who does all of he does the Red Rising series and Michael J. Sullivan and a lot of other authors that people like, I love, and he narrated it, and it's amazing. It's so good, and it reached the top 10 on Audible for all Audible books again. So I was lucky for that. That was partly due to like a daily deal situation, but I was sitting up there with Michelle Obama and all that, so that was pretty cool. So so since then I've just been writing, kind of spinning. It's really been this random moments of spikes of really cool fans who just kind of takes off randomly, and then just otherwise I just have these awesome, cool, loyal fans, and kind of accrued this slow following of people who love dragons and stories and elemental powers, and this kind of premise of these kind of 3 young kind of Harry Potter friends who find out they have elemental powers themselves, and I won't go too much of the story, but now they have to go find all the other elemental companions.
Yeah, and so let me ask. So we have, some people that might be listening that are looking to be writers and looking to do that, and that the people that are writing their books now, or authors that are self-published or looking to get a publisher. Was it based off of just the ease of accessibility of self-publishing, or was that an active part of you wanting to say, I'm going to do this by myself, I'm not going to go out and look for a publisher? What was the process of that when you're thinking about that?
No one's ever asked a question like that. I like that. You said you were going to ask cool, different questions. Yeah, it was so when I started writing, I was like, I'm going to do the traditional publishing way. I didn't even know self-publishing existed. I just was like, I want to get I didn't even know top 5 public. I didn't know any of that stuff. I just heard the story of Aragon, who, published on his own, and he went massive market and viral. So I was, naive enough, a mix of naivety and courageous enough to go to these conferences, these writer digests and these writers conferences and all these things to engage with people and stand in that awkward, awful line of agents where there's like 10 people in front of you, and they give a 10-second pitch, and they say yes or no, and then you give a 10-second pitch, and it was the worst, but fun. And so I was like, well, that's the route that I'm going to go. But in the first like month or 2 of doing it, I actually had some pretty good responses to the traditional route, but they were all asking me to change it constantly, like just completely rewrite it. And here's this young kid with a dream, who, like, I definitely was malleable to it. Anybody would be. And so I worried, I didn't worry so much that they were going to change it, I was going to publish it change. That was part of it. I was like, oh, like, the classic story of any good book that's made into a movie, aside from Lord of the Rings, all that, something that's so good in its foundation, and then it goes onto the screen, and then it's just awful. And so I was worried that The Knife's Edge, at its core, being so good, they're like, take out 20,000 words. It was a 150,000 book, and that they went down to about almost 100,000 words. I was more worried that I would lose my drive. I was more worried that the beginning of a writer is always like this cusp of like, is this even worthy? Like, why me? So I was worried that they were going to keep questioning and keep changing it, and I was going to throw in the towel at some point. And then ultimately I just kind of like was, confident and to enough to be like, what? I think there's people out there. And I heard of Kickstarter at the time, and this is actually kind of the beginning of it. and I just got, you know, kind of some really cool, awesome people who love fantasy and want to see stories come to life.
Yeah. So talk to us a bit about how you do this. As you said, and I remember you mentioned in a previous interview that you were always, walking around. No, actually, this was in your Kickstarter video.
Oh yeah.
Talking about that you're writing down ideas, with a recorder, you're getting this kind of stuff created. So let me ask you, as an author goes, did you, when you created this basically this world that you had, this fantasy world that you created, did you start off with the concept of the story in your head? Did you start off with the concept of the characters in your head, or did you start off with the concept of the world itself in your head? Because you have a very expansive world as well.
I started off with the world. It's slowly become more character driven. It was definitely a world-based thing in the beginning. I hesitate because it was kind of a combination of things that wasn't really character driven in the beginning, and it really is now. The heart of the story is about these interactions between friends and how they're so different foils, and how you have Faye, who's an enigmatic and mysterious, woman, and they're just all the kind of very, very differing personalities set in a magical world. But in the beginning, I actually had so much trouble developing my characters when I was 18, 19, that I remember I had an agent interested, and they're like, can you send me the description of your main character? Like, not physical, but mental and his personality traits. And I had trouble. I literally had trouble describing my main character. So I really had to go back to the drawing board on that. But most of the time I'd be talking to my recording, and I was looking for things that were just different. I was like, I've heard of elements done before, but I've never heard of the elements of flesh and metal. I think that's cool. So I'd talk to the recorder, I'd be like, let's set that aside. And I'd be talking to the recorder. I've heard of legends, maybe even legends with elemental powers, but I've never heard of legends with elemental powers that are dark. And then I was like, well, okay, but what if they're not just like anti-heroes? What if they're mistaken? So I tried to always find these. I describe it in other talks and things like that. Like when you're writing or like doing anything, it's like sifting for gold, and especially like I'm not very good at sifting for gold. But when I was a kid, you just get little flakes, and so at Disneyland, so you just keep getting these flakes, and you keep adding up all these flakes. You add up the two different strange elements, and you add up that the 9 legends are not actually evil, or maybe they are, and the kind of mystery of that. And you just set all those aside, and eventually I kind of accrued a cool foundation.
Yeah. And what I really love about, I'm just going to open that, just share this real quick for everybody to check out. For those that are watching, go to roninsaga.com. What I love about your website is that you actually have like almost a wiki page to this, where there's been so many times when talking and seeing some other author pages really don't go into details of what the backstory is. So you actually have your list of your characters on here. You have that, and then talking about the 9 Ronin on here, and I find that also. So was this? I guess my question is, how deliberate is this to say this is the entire world itself? And how much of this were you kind of afraid that this might be tipping your hat too much towards future book installments?
Yeah, it's always that balance, because it's like, for me, I was like, well, the saga is the saga, and I can write these characters, and these characters are ingrained. And a lot of those characters, as far as the 9 main Ronin, they're so important, but they were the predecessors in the world. And so the main young legends, they are based off those. And so it's kind of this cool template, so you can look back and be like, what is Gray going to be? Is he like Kale, the Ronin of Wind, the previous Ronin of Wind, who was the destroyer, the betrayer of men, this grand who could summon these like hurricanes and typhoon-esque things, cyclones. But it also is tough, because I remember even in that, you just see the description, there's all the 9 Ronin, and then there's like 4 or 5 main characters. But of course there's so many more main characters, and so it's hard for me, because it was the one I want to describe as much as I can to get people into the world, to have this kind of like wiki, as you say, but at the same time, things do shift and things do change. And is this the canonical version? Obviously, if it's coming from the Ronin Saga website, a wiki, the nice thing about a wiki is like, oh, the main character's name's alive. Zane isn't alive. Like obviously there's this kind of
Right.
it's a living, breathing kind of thing we want to do.
So let me have, as you've been writing this is I'm really curious about listening to some of your audiobooks and skimming and looking at some of your books. How often has this happened to you as a writer where the characters go off in a direction that you weren't planning and you just have to say, well, I just got to go where they're going? Or how much are you trying to steer this very unorganically, like this is the direction the story has to go? How much of the story are you as the author in control of?
I am, it's, I think authors always, this one's always so interesting to me. I don't know. I think I like, when I was first writing, I'd say like the characters take a mind of their own. And I still think there's a lot of truth to that. I don't know, like the percentage, how much I do think when you're in the moment, it's just like the classic, thing. When you're in the flow state, you're not really debating where you're going to go. And so sometimes unintentionally, you're like, the character's like, you know what, I'm going this way. And you're like, oh, I didn't, like that felt so natural for the dialogue. But, and then your editor's like, what? Like, they're going away that you had like 7 chapters were planning where they were going to be side by side. And what feels natural for the time is what was. But as you go deeper into a series 2, there is a lot more plotting that's involved. But the plotting doesn't feel. I used to be afraid of plotting. I used to feel like it was taking away the magic of the story and that it was depriving the organicness of it. But I don't feel that way. I feel like the characters are so stronger now, so much stronger now that they plotting them out is like, it's just plotting out what like what you like for where they're going to go, because what they're going to do anyway typically, and they can make changes and they can be unpredictable, especially the unpredictable characters. But yeah, especially with a 9-book series. You have to kind of know which characters, but I'm really barely a half a step above my readers. there's probably like some major plot points that obviously I know that no one knows, but there are so many things, especially regarding the revealing of the next Ronin, where we're going in the next, I'll know like, okay, the next setting for the next book is going to probably be the City of Flesh. But how it kind of pans out is totally, because I say this a lot, but if I'm surprised, my readers too. So.
Do you have any characters that you write that you just really love writing? Like you're almost to the point where you kind of try to fit them in the story just because you love how they interact with the other characters?
Yeah, book 2 took off. There's a character that I wrote that I had no intention of her being really part of the story. She was just supposed to get them from point A to point B. Her name was Faye, and a lot of people were like, I ship Faye in the main character, and she's like cool and enigmatic, and she's sexy, but she's kind of like not about her allure and femininity and all that. And she's just cool. So I ended up having to, like, book 3, I was like, she is a cool character, so I kind of shoehorned her in a little bit. But that was a little bit partly because I was just like, I don't know. It's like, okay, I guess I'll give you guys more. Now I've gotten stronger, so you guys can't tell me what I'm going to write or who I'm going to write. But yeah, so I think they're my favorite characters that are just, it's no secret that I love writing these kind of rascally, impish, rakish, charming characters, the kind of Matchroom Cothams of the world. So my version of that is Darius, who is who's 18, and he's of the 3 trio, he's the Ronin of Leaf. So he's got that kind of fickle, wild nature, and he's always like Matchroom. He wants to avoid. It's kind of my homage to Jordan. He's always trying to avoid responsibility, but he's going to get sucked into it. But unlike Matchroom, he leans in a little quicker. But he, yeah, so he's the awkward like third wheel of the three friends, where he's always trying to like, not get dragged into things. So I love him. And in this book, Tides of Fates, there's a character, Helix, who becomes kind of like, as some of my beta readers said, it would kind of become like, in the beginning he's kind of this like ornery and like almost annoying character that you think, but he becomes very much like Darius and Helix hang out, and they become the kind of charming, he becomes like a mini me of Darius.
So one of the things that you also launched that people can see within your book is that you have audiobooks. You actually have some really successful audiobooks. And before we get on, and you mentioned some previous interviews, you were able to nail down your wish list narrator. Tim was it Tim Reynolds?
Tim Gerard Reynolds.
And he had, look at he has hundreds of books that he's narrated for.
He's got a cornucopia. He's got a plethora. It was a hard choice looking back. I mean, it wasn't a hard choice for me. That's a lot. That's very lot. But there's so many good narrators out there. I mean, I was talking with my author friend Robert Zingari, and we were talking about, he's got Michael Kramer, and he narrated Real Time and others, and I think Sanderson's. So there's some of these narrators out there. For me, everyone's got a favorite. It's like and so Tim Gerard Reynolds was my dream narrator, and I didn't think I could get him. And the books were doing well, and I was like, man, I've always been behind on audiobooks. Like, I had a lot of contemporaries, and I've watched their ebook sales do really well, like mine. And all of a sudden they came out with audiobooks, and they just started taking off. And I was like, yeah, I think I was just nervous and scared of just committing to something like that. Someone reading your work aloud it's like, I don't know, somehow it's like personal. But then he was just, I was like, if I'm going to be able to get him, then about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, maybe a year ago, I saw him somehow in some capacity online doing something, and I was like, you know what, just gonna try it. And so I sent him an email, and it's like, hey, like, here's my deal, I'm blah blah blah. He said, yeah, I'll do it. And he's like, well, first he wanted to read the story, which was actually the most important part. I couldn't give away the spoiler, but he wanted to read some of the story to see if it was Sally, and as we were chatting about earlier, he read the first book and said, yes, I'm excited to wield the sword of the Ronin. And it's the coolest, nerdiest thing that anyone's ever told me. I want, if I could frame that on the wall, I'll put on a resume that I don't need. But yeah, so he narrated book 1, 2, so he narrated all of them. We're set to record Bastion of Sun. He's harassing me for the final document right now. I'm working up some glossary things. But he's set to record book 3 in December. So that should release. We're probably going to maybe do a mini Kickstarter for that one, so people can get the audiobook, because this is for everyone's already got book 1, 2, 3. But not everyone, sorry, everyone. There's previous Kickstarters for book 1, 2, and 3. Book 4 Kickstarter, which, by the way, you can get the first book and the second book. But yeah, we're gonna do. He's set to read it in December, and then January will be book 3's audiobook release date, and then May will be book 4's reading. I'm ready with book 4 for him to read. He's just so busy. He doesn't take any new clients on. He's got like some crazy publishing deal that he's locked in for the next 5 years, and so I had to like bribe him and send him cookies, things like that, just so he could kind of like get in a little earlier. Yeah, and he's just so busy. I actually talked to him like a month or 2 ago. He's like, yeah, I didn't. He's like, he told me, I never planned on being a narrator. He's like, I just wanted some extra cash one day. And I walked into the recording studio, and they're like, your voice is perfect. And he's like, now here I am with about 5 minutes to spare here and there.
and I compare it to thinking about some of my comic book writer friends who hire an artist to draw out frame by frame. How much of a twist do you say when you're hearing the narration? Say that's not how you say the word, or that's not the inflection I had in my head, or do you just say here it is, read it, and hope for the best?
That is the hard part. I don't consider myself a control freak, but I think I am more than I think I am. Yeah, so at first it's Tim. So like, he could, narrate a phone book and I'd listen to it. And he gets, kind of his right of way. But it is difficult, especially, this book is, my baby, and I've been, it's been in my head and I've been writing it for the last 8 years. And it's got all these, I want to treat all my fans. So it's a mix of those things. He really wants his liberties for the most part. I'd say 90% is just Tim being Tim. I'd say even like 95. I can always go back and tell him to read something differently, but then you run the risk of like re-recordings and stuff like that. It doesn't actually cost me any extra. It's all about finish time. But there's a few ways you can kind of hedge your bets to have it as much you as possible. And one of the ways is that you give them a glossary and you read aloud all the glossary terms into a recording, and then you give it to them. So when they read, Ondivoria, Aurelius, like that's your version because they have gone through that. There's so many things that are up for everything, literally everything, every word, every phrase. Like, oh, that's how you're gonna read that? Like there was Darius in the beginning. Some people are like, I don't know if I like Darius. It's not that I don't like Darius's voice, but I've heard him in my head that's part of the hard thing with this, because the book's been out for 3, 4 years, 5 years, and then the audiobooks are just releasing. So I'm getting all my new fan base like, cool, new, awesome, never heard it before. But the other people are reading it, listening to it again. They're like, yes, amazing. But they're like, but Darius sounds like, doesn't matter what it originally was. So Darius, for instance, is he has this kind of like very rural, almost accent. Tim's got a British, intonation to everything. And so in the beginning, I was like, I don't know, like Darius is kind of like, oh, Gray, like I don't know, that's too much. That sounds kind of like Batman. But he's got this kind of like charming, roguish, kind of snarky look to him. But he made him sound a little lighthearted and almost, I don't want to say bumbling because that's way too much. But it was cool because what he did was not only did he make Ava and Darius's accents similar because they are from the same town, so he does these cool depths of things like that. But you could listen to Darius in book 2 and book 3, and you can watch his evolution because obviously he gets he's less slapstick, he's less kind of like he's he evolves, he has an arc and he's clever, and so you watch him. So I did go in though, and I was like, oh, like Darius really evolves, and so I even like tried to have influence on that. But it's hard, you don't want to like judge creativity because it's a creative process for them. And then there are so many things that someone does right that you're like, do I go into the kitchen and this soup tastes amazing, but I don't like red onions. I like, yellow or golden onions. Like, do I tell them to change that? And is that somehow going to change everything else? So there is a really interesting kind of back and forth with all of it. Generally, I think as the series progresses now, these characters are becoming so locked in. He'll introduce new characters, so I have no idea how he's going to do Mathelstan or the Patriarch or Arbiter Fair or anything like that. But it is a really fun unknown. It is really fun and scary. And there was one of the things we even ran into. Like I thought he knew what we had this ability in the world. Gray, the main character, can use this thing called the key, which is spelled K-I, and it's sensing, going into someone else's body via like kind of mental like telepathy and sensing their emotions. So you can sense if someone's scared or afraid or happy or excited, and that helps him kind of course, if he's talking with someone, negotiating, but also to the highest depths he can sense of the thing. So anyway, but the point is, he pronounced it chi. And that's definitely, like, there's some Eastern and Western and kind of undertones and things like that, but that just was not the right tone to the whole thing. It definitely all of a sudden the book, and it's said all the time. So everything, it was like chi, chi, chi. And I was like, no, that's not what it is. So yeah, it's a fun back and forth, but at the end of the day, when you hear him say something like from a bird's point of view, and it's like, I will get, and you hear him get into it, it's just, yeah, you're like, you do you, you're crushing it.
How has he since the narration, since you've heard him and your fans and your readers have heard it, how much has this had an influence on your writing itself, writing of the characters?
Oh, a ton. Yeah. No, I haven't even told anyone that. I feel like that's an insider secret thing, but definitely, I mean, there's little things that I'll do that where I try not to play with dialects and things too much, because it's like a beginning writer's thing that you can really mess up if, like, you don't put the accent in the right place and whatnot. But hearing him do cool, fun voices and giving him that liberty. So because it's such a beautiful medium, I really do, when someone says something, vehemently, or when someone says something timidly, like, I'm not going to throw in adjectives left, right, and center, but these things he does so well, so it provides us depth. So I'm always, now whenever I write dialogue, specifically, I am always thinking about him, and I'm like, how is he going to do this? And I read it out loud, and I try to do a Tim voice. And there's something to be said for, just in general, for your book. This is like the most classic thing everyone's heard, when you read your book aloud, And so I used to, like, read my book 10, 20 times before it went to the final stages. But reading it aloud now I'm, like, almost forced to, because I'm thinking, how would Tim say this all the time? What would Tim do? And so he's been a huge influence in the kind of the crafting of the story, and it's kind of helped me take it to a new level at times, where I'm like, okay, this is going to be, a really fun scene that people are going to get into. And also, on a very small level, you really want to be really clear when you're reading a book. It's very clear to see who's speaking and what kind of order. But from a narrator's perspective, you really want to be clear on when speaker tags and things change. So, and even the repetition of things. I was listening to reading it aloud the other day, and he rushed over someplace, and then he rushed again, and the rush typically wouldn't have been a big deal because it was spanned in the two or three paragraphs. But I was like, auditorily, it sounded, off to me. So yeah, he definitely has helped shape it.
So talk to us before we jump into your Kickstarter. Talk to us a bit about just your writing style, your method. Are you write in the morning? Do you write in the afternoon? How do you write? And then is it lots of noise? You need to be quiet. Like, what's your process? How do you sit down and write? And how much do you do?
It's kind of haywire. I try to spend. I wake up in the morning. I have a procedure, so I have a routine. I wake up around 6:30 or 7. Do a workout. I used to go to them when that was a viable option. Now I do a workout at home. Do some P90X or some Shanti Insanity. So I do a little at-home workout, and then I'll make a smoothie and I'll go for a shower, and then it gets me kind of in the right frame of mind. And I'll sit down around like 7:30 or 8, and I try to always write for like hour chunks and, get up and move around. I feel like an hour is usually, every once in a while I'll hit a 2 or 3 hour stretch where I won't move. But like, it's just hard. It's hard on the body. It's hard on, like, mentally when you're that sucked into a moment. I really recommend, hour long, 30 minutes. Sometimes it's like, something like that. You don't get enough time to really be invested in your characters and in the moment. I always shoot for 5 hours minimum when I'm doing a writing day, and I have a little post-it and I have a whole procedure, and probably find it otherwise, but basically, like, I'll have a little post-it, I'll slap it down next to my laptop, and I'll write Monday on the top, and I'll categorize every minute, even if I have to get up for a second. And I have all these different tricks to keep me rooted into my seat. And over time I've needed less of those tricks. For a variety of reasons, because I'm excited to read it or write it, and then I'll hit my 5-hour mark, write it all down on my Monday. I'll do a highlighter across it, and I'll slap it up on a wall. This is like when I'm like in like go mode, and then it'll be all beside each other: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all the way, and so forth. And I will typically, I'll try to section off. I think the best way for me is, instead of treating it like 3 days on or 3 days off or whatever, things will come up. They just do. But I will try to section off like a whole month, and I'll just determine myself and just be like, okay, 1 month, I'll take a Sunday off, or I'll take a Saturday off, and just be completely enmeshed in the world. And so that's typically what'll happen. But then all of a sudden I'll have to, oh my gosh, by the way, a new opportunity came up, or you have to do this, and so I'll have to take a few days. But I try for like a month-long chunk.
Yeah. And so with this, you'll start seeing your books. Do you have, as I say, do you foresee, book 5 coming out at around this same time of every 3 years or so, or because of the schedule, you're going to be putting these out, every couple of years or so now?
Things kind of slowed down the last 2 books, I think. I think that the last 2 books were slower than normal. And that was a confluence of reasons. I mean, book 4, I went and I decided to go get a degree. I got my master's, which took a year, and that really, during that whole year, I was basically just working and teaching, and doing my education. But yeah, I feel, if I was to give a timeline, and it's always hard, so it's like keeping my foot to the fire, I would say that each book, I'm in a very confident zone, and that's a huge thing as a writer. Knock on wood, that I could probably have a book done in under a year. Then of course the editing phase is always 4, 5, 6 months. So I think if I get a good track, and if there's so many there's always more opportunities, so they always want to verge you away. But I'm trying to keep my vision kind of focused. So I think book 5 is looking to be about a year and a half. My hope.
Okay. And so talk to us now, because that is let's look at your Kickstarter.
Yeah.
You now have
we broke the 8K mark. That's cool.
158 backers.
Yeah.
And you're already over 2/3 of the way of it. So yeah, this is fantastic.
Yeah, we've been out for what, like 6 or 7 hours. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I'm always blown away by it.
Yeah. So with the because you have such a great fan base. You have a lot of people, and and as you mentioned earlier, the launching of your audiobooks, that the audiobooks actually significantly increased your reader base. Do you see? So talk to us a bit about, do you say, you kind of mentioned it just to, for our viewers and listeners out there, briefly about the, book 4, the Ronin Saga. As you say, this is going to be mostly it's Tides of Fate. I think we can I pick what element this book is going to be based about. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll leave that up to the reader to Yeah, so it's Tides of Fate. Yeah, I've been lucky to have a lot of these audiobook people who come into the world. They're like, oh my gosh, this world's so cool because I picked them up from Audible. I've also been really lucky that I've had authors who kind of helped give me a nudge. My last campaign, I'm super thankful to Michael J. Sullivan. I thought he has some amazing authors, our readers. And so they've been really supportive and really loving the saga. So Tides of Fate is an exciting one. Because if anybody knows what happened in Bastion of Sun, it was an opportunity for Gray not to be the main, and he's the main character, And so for me, it really if you know the series, you know that there's these 9 Ronin and they have 9 elements of powers, and that they're all kind of this Knights of the Round Table kind of allegory. And the knights, as we know, well, King Arthur, Lita, they're all equals. That's the Round Table. And so I really wanted in book 3, Ava is the Ronin of Sun. She's this kind of clever, smart, sassy innkeeper's daughter. And so it's her story of going to the city of Sun. And it's her legend and her legacy and her kind of growth. And so because in book 1, we had Darius being a little bit like, snarky and silly and kind of a little, I wouldn't say flat, but not showing the depth of his kind of true fun character. And so book 2, he really comes into his own. We see his depth. Book 3, in book 2, a lot of people were like, oh man, Ava's complaining. I'm like, just wait till book 3. And so book 3 is your opportunity to kind of really showcase herself. And then the other reason that book 3 was kind of like, this is all kind of leading back full circle, but the other reason that book 3 almost felt like, so hard for people, because they loved it. They loved all the things it was setting up, but the Ronin were about to be together at the end of book 2. Spoiler. And so there was this moment that they're staring out into the sands, and Ava and Darius and Gray and Zane, these characters are together, and they're like, next generation, let's start. And as soon as they begin on that journey, they're ripped apart. So Bastion of Sun was kind of this like pulling the rug from my readers a little bit, and just like, the fork away from their mouth on the morsel they wanted so bad. And so the Tides of Fate is the opportunity for Gray to, come into his own, to come back to his friends, and because he's ripped apart because of this kind of sickness, and he's the blood pact that he didn't fulfill in book 2, and Ava to rejoin, and to Darius to rejoin. And so all these characters get to join together, and the other Ronin that not all of them, but 1 or 2 or 3 may make their appearance. The greater evil, literally, I won't, obviously with a high fantasy series, it's so hard, but this whole book series, it's a 9-book fantasy series, with book 1, with like something Robert Jordan, the greater evil is the dark one, but with this one, there is this unknown. It's a greater hint than even the Voldemort, the kind of thing. And so, so all of it's kind of unveiled now in book 4, and it's everything I wanted. It's this, it's got, the epic action sequences, and you get to see, Gray be powerful and Ava be powerful, and all these characters and use their ingenuity and puzzle solving, and it's got more twists. It's just kind of, the pacing is super fun on it. So it's while the rug was pulled away with the feet on book 3, rug is firmly placed back, I feel like, in book 4. So I'm really excited, and I think that'll kind of create this attention that people have been waiting for. Right. So yeah.
So talk to us a bit about also your pledge levels.
Yeah, so we have a host of different pledge levels. I want people to be able to access it at any point. I really like to make the ebook super affordable, so you can get the ebook for 10, but the whole set is 30 for the ebook. The paperback is 30 for the early paperback. We had a bunch of hardcover, not a bunch. We had like, I think 10 early book 4 hardcovers, and they were like, I actually had people complaining because I meant to put them as a tier right away, and some people were like, where are they? And I was like, oh shoot, they didn't go live. And so I made them live, and as soon as I clicked live, they were bought out immediately. And so but luckily we still have a bunch of other early bird rewards, especially for people who are new to the series. It's great. Well, we have the 30 ebook set, which is super cool. My favorite is the 3 different tiers for the paperbacks and the hardcovers. Right. I think there's a set. So there's one set that's for Yeah, that's for the hardcover for book 1. That's obviously, yeah, book 4. That's definitely going to be one of the most popular. You really can't go wrong with that because you read all 3. Just give me the 4th one. But yeah, that's the first one. So the early bird for the paperback set. And this one's great because you obviously get all 3 books or all 4 books, and they're all signed. And it's definitely, yeah, the best deal that you can get.
So just to be clear, though, Matt, they're signed by you and not just someone else.
They're signed by someone. I mean, they're signed. Look, that's all I know. I didn't say
my neighbor signed the name.
I don't think my name's, yeah. See, that's all that matters. Like my wrist gets sore. Yeah, it's a good question. They're signed by me. Actually, what I'd never even mentioned to people is they're not just signed, but they're personalized. Oh, cool. So when it gets time to, which is actually, I love my readers, but it can be another eyesore and brain sore because, you know, if everyone wants, I've had some people, a lot of people are just like, cool, I just want it signed. I just want that signature. I want that hardcover so I can read it and put it on my shelf. But I've had some pretty cool signatures, but sometimes they will make me go through a hoop or two where I'm signing dragons and I'm signing, you know, Gregor, the opener of jaws and the crusher of spirits. And so I'm like, so yes, they're all signed and personalized. 140 is for the early bird hardcover set, which is definitely probably maybe the second most popular of the sets. Aside from the paperbacks up there, also maybe 1 or 2. And then the most popular is going to be, you know, once the early birds sell out and everything, yeah, we've got 2 left of that, is the early bird heroes set. I think that's going to be in the long term overall especially for new readers. And that one is every single hardcover edition of the saga, book 1, 2, 3, 4, and all the physical copies of the short stories. And so you're going to get 7 books essentially.
Wow.
And I'm going to make my local USPS very upset that they have 500 pounds per box. So yeah, it's going to be everything. So it'll get you the inside track, and the short stories and the novellas are super well loved. They're a great kind of inside track into it.
Right. You know, even with this, not only is it signed, these are signed, but even if the size of these books, if you're going to buy these in a bookstore, it would have cost well over $170.
Oh, yeah. The last book is, you know, 35 or 40 retail alone. So I think cumulatively, I forgot what I was running the numbers on it, but it was in like the 250, you know, 300 mark range for retail. So yeah, it's my way of just, you know, I want people to. And I try to keep shipping really, really low too. I think they're all like, you know, $3, $4, $5 for shipping. I forgot what my campaign manager has it at, but like per you know book. And so international, of course, is always a pain in the butt.
Right.
But yeah, I want everyone to get the whole set. You know, I want people to be a part of it. I love it. So.
And I love this idea of the Omni package where someone would actually pay for being in one of your stories. Huh?
Yeah, I've been lucky. So every time I've had last Kickstarter and the Kickstarter before and the Kickstarter before that, I've limited it to usually 1 person. This time I'm doing 2. So if someone gets to be part of the story, they get the last one. I think he's totally okay with me saying his name is Joshua Gray, and so something stuck out in my mind, and obviously the main character is Gray. But says I can't do that. So Grayson and Joshua comes up as well. But Lieutenant Grayson is a character in book 4, and he's actually a really cool character. So originally it was just an option that people could be like, oh, cool, like this seems cool, and I'll be if I'm really interested, I'm really invested in the series, I'm really want to be kind of immortalized. Maybe I'll become like a side character or some sort of minor role that's a little almost of an extra. But Grayson and I have someone we had a backer from last one, so I'm putting him into book 5 now. So this would be into book 5, and potentially into book 6. But Grayson, who was Joshua, who's a background book in Bastion of Sun. Or sorry, yeah, I think it was Bastion of Sun. He is an integral part of the story. So now his character is he's, you know, he was this thief lord's right-hand man, and so now I was planning on killing him off, and he's becoming more and more popular by the second. So yeah, it's a great way of me kind of like taking my favorite fans and favorite readers, and people who just, you know, who want to support it, find a really cool thing that can kind of be worked into the story and find their way.
It sounds like it's like little Easter eggs that you put into the stories.
Oh, it's totally. I always tell, like, you know, all the people, you know, like, oh, this is your character. And the last one too, he's like, oh, you know, here's a good variation for my name. And I'm always open to it. I'm like, how's this sound for the name? And so we can kind of come up with it together. I had one of my first ones who joined in, and he's in book 1 and 2. His name was Ryan, but he liked to go by Rygar. So he's in the book. He's one of these little like thief is Rygar. So it's cool. So it's for anytime someone reads it, you know, all these hundreds of thousands of copies out there. Rygar is. I sent him a clip of Tim Gerard Reynolds, and he loves Tim Gerard Reynolds too, narrating just that part before it came out, and he just, like, you know, like teary eyes. It's just like, Rygar's alive.
And you have and then this is like your highest tier, the God tier package. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so we had that was the one we had. I've done that this will be the 3rd time. So the first time we did it, it was just an awesome way. First off, you know, whoever backs at level is my, like I said, undying gratitude. You know, and you know, I'm love collaborating at the level where, well, things are getting crazier and wild. If you were that much of a fan, I'm constantly talking. John is the one who backed last time. I'm staying in collaboration with him. So I'm pretty open with the God tier. The first time I did the God tier with my backer Steven decided to he's like, I just want to hang out. So I was like, cool, let's do it. So you have 2 options basically. You can either get a story, either your story, and I've got the exact word count on there, but you get your story coming to life, and I will write it however you want in your world that you've always been kind of dreaming and kind of spinning, and I can help send to my beta readers and kind of help you, talk you through the publication process. Even if you just you have a novel in your head, and you want to just start it, and I can kind of help write it for you, the first, you know, 10% of it or 5% of it. Steven decided to choose the options I had to meet up and to hang out and just to nerd out. So unfortunately, though, I was getting ready to head to Phoenix, and that's where he's at. And so our hangout is delayed until COVID is over. But then John, who backed the last one, I was like, all right, let's write your story. He's like, I want a story, but what I really want is he wants to write a video game. So we're taking his God tier package, and we're kind of crafting it into a video game, and eventually actually kind of expanding and doing even much more. So we're going to be working together as kind of collaborators. He wants to, make a full-blown fantasy video game that's kind of a roguelike game and a dungeon crawler. So whoever backs it's basically like, hey, look, I support you. I love what you're doing. I have either a creative idea, so it's either that sense, whether it's a video game or writing or whatever it is, a script, or I would love to hang out in some capacity. And so that's my way of of connecting. And so it's cool because some of these people are just super passionate and supportive and love creating, the arts. And it's also a way for me to help kind of jumpstart things that they love. For instance, someone missed the Kickstarter, the last one, and they wanted the God tier. But they're like, actually, I don't want a 20 or 30-page story. I want a 300-page story. So I normally don't do ghostwriting, but because this is kind of a cool opportunity, I opened myself up to it, and so I helped ghostwrite his book. I can't tell you what the name is, unfortunately, but yeah, it's out there in the world, and so, yeah, there's probably some characteristics and some features that are similar. So yeah, however people want to support and back that, I'm totally open to kind of being collaborative in the process of the creative part of it.
That's awesome. Yeah, looking at this, yeah, you're already 159 backers. That's outrageous. So you kind of said earlier you weren't expecting it to go this fast. Then I don't know the superstitions of Kickstarter, but
yeah, you don't know. You never know. It's like I haven't checked my phone in a while, and so you never know.
Yeah.
So I was reaching out to a buddy about like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I was like, I'm going to launch this, and I think I'm gonna hit my goal. And he's like, yeah, you're gonna hit your goal. He's like, why don't you do a little like pre stuff? So I did a little pre stuff to let people know, and I think that kind of helped build up some hype and everything. But I think, there's always multiple tipping points. I'm not Sanderson. I'm not releasing a 4 million Kickstarter, so I'm humbly, it's my way of kind of humbling myself. But yeah, I once I saw we had 220 people who were notified like as soon as they came out, and we have like 7,000 people on the email list and everything, and 2.5 years waiting for book 4, and I know how good it is, and I have an amazing campaign manager and everything. I was like, it's like, this is going to be cool. Like, this is, I think we're going to do, and so I'm really excited. I think everyone always hopes for this with a Kickstarter. You always kind of like never really know, but you're like, what can we accomplish? And that's the question. Like, sure, I think we're all well on our way to hitting our goal, and I'm so excited for that. But I think there's some cool stretch goals out there, and some things that I've been talking about. And so I think at this rate, I think if we keep sharing and liking and getting more people into it, I think we have some options to get some really, really cool next level stuff.
Cool. Wow. Well, this has been a quick hour, Matt. So I would say, where can people find you?
Definitely matt-wolf.com is a great place to find me. That's where my current website is, and that has a lot of connections to me. RoninSaga.com is also a great way, of course, until I eventually I'm probably going to transfer it over to matt-wolf.com. But yeah, follow on the Kickstarter, hit follow on me. I try to be semi-interesting. And then I have an Instagram. That's wolf_writer. Just like you'd imagine it would be spelled, as I am a writer. And that is where I do a lot of my updates. I have a facebook.com/Ronin Saga. And I'll just be keeping people up to date and getting the next books out. And always feel free to email me too. I think my email is on there, or send me a message. And I'm excited for people to dive into the world and stay amid Farehaven, get into the next book.
Yeah, and as I said, check out the Kickstarter. There's some great stuff on here, and plus, as you mentioned earlier, you can get all 4 books right now through this. And if you listen to, if you love the audiobooks, fantastic audiobooks on there. It is an easily accessible fantasy world that anybody can jump into at any time. And this Kickstarter is probably the perfect time for new readers to experience Ronin Saga is right here. So thank you. So thank you, Matt. And so when you get your next book, right, when book 5 comes out in 18 months, or was it 6 months or 18 months? Did you say? Did you want?
Yeah, like 18 months is the plan. Yeah. Yeah.
Come back. I'd love to talk to you about book 5. This has been fantastic. I had a great time.
I would love that too. I would love. I love all. I've had such a good time. I'm like doing little spoilers and all this stuff. So I think everyone would be excited about that. So, let's stay connected. I can't wait to continue.
All right. Thank you.
This is books to show that I can read.
It's always good to have an author like know how to read. I think that's always
Yes.
like
It's up there. It's up there. Don't